Welcome back. There is something intriguingly spooky about ghost stories and haunted places. The anticipation and the squeals of fear, plus diving under the covers. Now, Carolyn, Ossorio, and Kim Shepard, the hosts of the Scene of the Crime podcast, took a break from cold cases to talk about what scares us. Carolyn, you're up first. You have a ghost story after visiting the abandoned Martha Washington School for Girls. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I was 14 years old and, I think I should have just gone trick-or-treating, but I was trying to be like cool. And these two teen boys talked us into going to the Martha Washington School for Girls. And this is in Seattle. I grew up in Kent. So it's like, not only was it spooky, but it's like, okay, we're going on a journey. So along the journey, they proceed to tell us about how the school was haunted by the ghosts of teen girls and that there were rumors of murder and mayhem. And so we get there and it is like everything you would imagine with a spooky 19th century school for girls. It had like boarded up windows. It was just like the most terrifying experience. But part of it, in retrospect, looking back, it was all in my imagination, right?
Well, of course. Why do we like ghost stories like this? Carolyn, you actually have some perspective on it.
Yeah, like when Kim and I were talking about doing a fun ghost story show for the podcast, what I did find was that we love ghost stories because it makes us get closer to the people that we share that experience with. And so I think that was true with these teen boys who were obviously trying to get close to my friend and I, hey, back in the day. But it also gives us perspective. Like when we do our true crime podcast, it's like to remember the victims. And I don't know in this particular case whether anything actually happened there. It was rumored that there was also some satanic rituals going on back in the day. So it's kind of like we always have to kind of remember when we get scared, like these are actual people that went through this, right?
Yeah, it is scary to realize that something horrible would happen to another human being. Kim, you obviously like Halloween, just judging by your background now.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Clearly you like it a little bit. But you also like visiting cemeteries, which many people find creepy, but you don't.
No, I grew up across the street from a cemetery and I actually really enjoyed going and just like walking around. It was a really beautiful spot up on a hill. It was always very peaceful and quiet and, well taken care of. And also, reading the tombstones, you can learn a lot about people and there's a sense of respect and love that comes along with that. And it's just a nice feeling. Like I really enjoy being at cemeteries and I always thought it was really weird. And then I actually found out my mother-in-law also loves going to cemeteries. So she and I have sort of bonded over becoming what some people call like a tombstone tourist or a cemetery tourist.
Every time we go
on road trips, we look for cemeteries that we can look at and it helps you learn about the area too. You learn about the people who are buried there, you learn about the history of the area, and it's just, I find it fascinating.
Isn't there one that's really cool in Roslyn?
Yeah, that is just one of my all-time favorites. So it's actually called the Roslyn Cemetery Complex because there are dozens of unique cemeteries that are, fenced off from each other, but right adjacent to each other. So you can go through there and it's like a half-mile long road with cemeteries on either side. And there's a lot of history there. Like, for example, the very first Black mayor in the state of Washington was in Roslyn. So you can learn about him and his family by visiting that. The interesting thing about the Roslyn cemeteries is that there's a lot of really ornate tombstones and obelisks and all kinds of really neat stuff. And then you come to this plain cemetery that's just lawn, just grass with these plain white crosses with no names on them. And it's a stark contrast to the rest of the complex. So you wonder, what's going on there? And that I found out is what they call the Black Miners Cemetery. Apparently back in the 1800s, there was the worst coal mining disaster in the state of Washington. And there were a lot of immigrants, particularly African-American immigrants who had been brought over to work the mines in Roslyn. So when this mining tragedy happened, the people who were known to people who lived in the town, who maybe grew up there, they were buried with reverence and respect and a marker. But the immigrants who didn't have family close by were buried in these plots that, we don't even know their names.
That is so sad. I always think that cemeteries are a place of like sacred. It's just very, it's sacred, hallowed ground. But I don't know about that cemetery. That would kind of scare me. What do you think, Carolyn?
I think I've just seen too many like Salem's Lot and Pet Cemetery, growing up, that I kind of go towards that creepy vibe. But that's what's so great about working with Kim. I love her perspective, the historical perspective. And so instead of looking at it in a fearful way, digging down into the layers of the story is kind of more interesting than just the scary part of it. Although, obviously Martha Washington all these years later has still stuck with me because I was so freaking scared.
The moral of this story is don't go to haunted, abandoned places with teenage boys. That is very good advice, if I may say so myself.